Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 54, looking at the Web3 Metaverse. I'm your host, David Krome, go by Krome in the Metaverse. And today we're really just going to do a little tour of the Web3 Metaverse, a topic that we like to discuss here on Web3 Warriors from time to time. Unfortunately, our guests had a little bit of a scheduling conflict, so instead we're going to be walking through a few of the kind of top metaverses that I personally have been looking at and kind of walking around in, experiencing through my time in this NFT space. And we'll also be kind of just discussing some of the pros and cons of the way that you can kind of engage in the metaverse these days. I do want to also just mention that we have a metaverse space at web3warriors.io where you can fill out our guest book. If you sign the guest book, you'll enter for a chance to win one of these really cool limited edition Avril 15 wearables made by the very talented Jagar. Thank you, Jagar, for your support on that. So if you sign this guest book here, you'll be able to enter to win one of our limited edition Avril 15 wearables based on this Avril 15 Season 2 number 6 NFT, which is our beloved kind of mascot for most of our social media branding, and it goes along with our kind of purple and blues and the hues that we like at Web3 Warriors here. So definitely eager to reward one lucky collector. Also, if you were one of the community members who did claim one of our 444 What's in Store NFTs that was celebrating the 1-year anniversary of our show, then you are already a holder of this limited edition Avril 15 wearable, and you can find it in your hidden folder. So thank you to those community members who did claim our NFT. And this is just the first of many random perks that you can enjoy for holding the NFT. So you do have one of these really cool mask wearables, beautifully made by Jagar. So thank you again, Jagar, for that. And without further ado, I really want to look at what is going on in the state of the Web3 Metaverse right now. I attended a State of the City event earlier this week, so I think that's inspiring a bit of this conversation. But also just earlier this week, there was a really insane announcement that came out of the Yuga Labs corner of the Metaverse, where, of course, they created the Bored Ape Yacht Club, very popular NFT collection, and they are building their own kind of corner of the Metaverse called The Other Side, which is promising to be very high fidelity, very high quality graphics, and very gamified. So kind of aiming to be almost like a Grand Theft Auto level type of functionality and really immersion, but having Web3 integrated in the whole thing, and assets for your wearables, assets for your land that you own, all that good stuff that we look at in the Web3 space and in the Web3 Metaverse. So they had a really big announcement just earlier this week that I believe it was a sale of an NFT for their entry key for $1.6 million, which is insane when you really think about it. So the Yuga Labs Dookie Dash winner sold his key for $1.63 million in Ethereum just earlier this week. So, for anyone saying NFTs are dead, case in point, obviously they're not dead. Somebody thinks a single NFT token is worth $1.63 million for, it's like early access, key that apparently is going to give you benefits in this other side metaverse that is yet to come out fully. So this kind of gets to one of my biggest concerns right now in the Web3 metaverse space, and that is speculation, which this space is rife with speculation. So when you look at something like this, where, this gamer, who I believe is 18 years old, Mongrel, he's a very popular Fortnite gamer, apparently, in the esports space. So they had a contest. Yuga Labs launched a contest with this game, Dookie Dash, that was a pretty fun game. It's kind of try not to hit anything while going through this big tube kind of game. Gamers out there will know what I'm talking about. But it was an interesting game. I wanted to play it, but you had to own a Bored Ape Yacht Club or one of their NFTs. I think is either a mutant or an actual Bored Ape in order to get the access to the Dookie Dash game. And then they had a tournament. And so I think it was the top 10. Anyway, the top scorers were able to get these keys. And the first the top highest scorer got the primo key, right? So like very limited edition key to the other side universe. So he was able to turn around and sell that for $1.63 million in Ethereum, which is interesting and really shows kind of the intertwined nature of Web3 and gaming, which is definitely an intersection that this podcast has been focused on from the very beginning. And so with this kind of happening this week and showing, that connection between gaming and the metaverse, showing that connection between the value in the metaverse and the value that exists in the gaming space that we all know of very well, multi-billion users, multi-billion dollar industry, really one of, if not the leading industries in the creator space is the gaming space, right? So as we see the metaverse evolving, as we see things growing, it's going to happen with the support and enthusiasm of the gamer community. And I actually believe that it cannot happen without the support and enthusiasm of the gamer community, because I just don't think you're going to get that level of enthusiasm from your average person out there who has not been maybe spending as much time in the digital space and has not seen the value that exists within the digital space, like the gamers who have been spending hundreds, thousands of dollars on assets within their digital gaming universes for decades, really. So it's not a new kind of function for them. So that's kind of a bit of what we want to talk about today. I'm going to be looking at 4 of the kind of top Web3 metaverse spaces that are actually at least partially live already, if not fully live. And that is Voxels, Decentraland, Sandbox, and Somnium Space. And before I jump into each of these platforms, I actually just want to play a small clip of Dr. Jane Thomason from one of our earlier episodes. I consider her a real guru of the metaverse space. She definitely looks at the wider view of the metaverse much more broadly than just the Web3 metaverse. We are focused on the Web3 metaverse here, and the distinction between the Web3 metaverse and maybe these other metaverse spaces is ownership, right? Is actual ownership of the lot of land, is ownership of every asset that you have in your wallet that you can then freely trade with very minimal fees to the platform, and being able to completely autonomously trade and have real economy essentially working and real world value attached to it, not just value within this micro economy. Like in Grand Theft Auto, you use Grand Theft Auto money, or in Fortnite, you use Fortnite bucks, And I'm thinking in the maybe Facebook Zuckerberg metaverse, you might be using, Facebook bucks or whatever. I've heard they might be embracing Polygon, but we'll see. But I know their margins are, it's a whole different story. So I wanted to play this clip by Dr. Jane Thomason because I do think she really summed it up perfectly as far as kind of the differences in the metaverse space and how kind of the gaming space might influence the broader metaverse space. So we're just going to play that clip quickly, and then we'll keep the conversation going here.
And not the Zuckerberg metaverse, because, I kind of think there's 4 strands of metaverse, actually. One is the big tech, Zuckerberg, Apple, Google, and so forth. And they're just going to be another extension of what they already do, which is extract value from you, take your data, take your money, and they'll do that in the metaverse. Exactly. And then you've got the gaming community, which already had many of the features of the metaverse, that they were using in playing the games. And they had the assets. You couldn't necessarily exchange value for them before, but now you can. So they've kind of embraced the token economy. And they've got 3 billion users worldwide. So they're going to be an incredibly important vector for blockchain and metaverse. Then you've got the Web3 community, who are building this decentralized internet of value that's peer-to-peer, and where creators get rewarded for what they do. And I don't know if it's a 4th strand, but I'm going to make it a 4th strand, which is governments, because you're seeing, the city of Seoul in Korea announcing government services are going on the metaverse, NEOM in Saudi Arabia, Dubai with its metaverse strategy. And so I think you are already seeing governments realizing that there are certain aspects of their services that they can provide in this always on immersive environment that are going to help them make better connections and provide better services to their citizens.
That's it. So to reiterate, I think she hit the nail on the head there, right? So she's talking about, quote unquote, the Zuckerberg metaverse, which is your typical kind of data extraction, basic kind of Web2 social media company way of functioning, extract data, extract value, offer some networking ability, offer the idea that you're going to be able to market to a much bigger audience, and that's kind of how they justify a lot of the value extraction that they do. But ultimately, it's not fully decentralized. It is not really on the blockchain in any meaningful way, right? And so the ownership is not sovereign. It's not truly decentralized, right? And then she talked about the gaming metaverse and the gamers and how they have already been, in the metaverse. Many billions of them have already been in the metaverse enjoying that space. And so they're going to have a huge role to play in the advancement of the metaverse. And then she looked at the Web3 metaverse as well, which we've been talking about, having that ownership, having that decentralized blockchain kind of immutability, and the ability that you can actually trade your goods and assets across the blockchain and with very little friction and with very little interference from any middle people. I think that those two have to kind of get married, and that's what the show's about. And that's what I think is ultimately going to happen. And when we see something like that news that just came out of Dookie Dash with someone, a gamer, 18 years old, using his gaming skills to essentially win the Dookie Dash competition and then turn around and sell the NFT that he got for free from winning the Dookie Dash competition for $1.6 million. And granted, this is an esports streamer who was already making maybe not millions, but definitely many thousands of dollars in his esports career just playing Fortnite on Twitch, So I think that's just a case in point of what we've been talking about here, with the idea that gamers and Web3 have a natural connection, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. So with that, I'm currently hanging out in Earplug's spot in the Voxels Metaverse, which is the DJ Sandbox spot. Shout out to Earplug. A lot of really cool artwork here. So when looking at the Voxels Metaverse, there are really kind of a lot of pros and cons. They're going through a lot of a kind of shakeup right now in leadership, because I think from a more like kind of traditional marketing and I guess communications, even PR standpoint, Voxels has a lot of work ahead of them. They've got some more kind of corporate heavy hitters doing similar things to them. So you've got the Sandbox, which is also a voxel-based metaverse with a lot more industry money behind it, a lot of big names, Snoop Dogg, and all kinds of corporate entities that you could think of, media entities, comic books, video games, stuff like that. So Sandbox is doing a very similar project, but with a lot more money, I would say, but also a lot more closed centralization, as opposed to Voxels, which is the big pro that the Voxels metaverse has. It's already functioning, it's already fully open and accessible to creators, and creators are taking full advantage, building really cool pieces, as you can see here in Earplug's corner of the Voxels metaverse. So that's one of the advantages of Voxels, is that it's accessible. When you build it, when you buy your lot on the Polygon blockchain, you own it forever. You will be able to trade your assets, sell your assets. You can create wearables within here and sell those wearables. Like I mentioned, Jagar, Earplug. We've got a lot of really amazing wearable creators in the NFT community. So Voxels has been very good from a community angle, from a decentralized ownership angle. And I think, because of the way the bear market works, because of the way that all metaverse spaces have kind of gone down in perceived value from the height of the bear market, where there was so much speculation, so much money, these floor prices were going up to 2-3 ETH just for like these Voxels land plots. They're now down, I think, to like 0.3 floor price for Voxels. So it just goes to show, like with any market, the bear market is going to increase speculation, it's going to drive investment. And when people start thinking, oh, maybe this isn't going to pan out, then things kind of fall off and the value goes down a little bit. So that's hurt them a little bit right now, because, I think whatever the case may be, a lot of these metaverse entities have been banking on the sale of land to kind of be their main source of revenue. So with that, we've heard recently there was the CEO has stepped down. They're taking on different leaders. They're actually, I think, cycling through a few different people, going through a little bit of a shakeup. So it'll be interesting to see, how Voxels continues to evolve. But I will say, on the community angle, on the decentralized ownership angle, they've really just hit it out of the park, and it's just a really cool playground for creators, and always really inspiring to see, what NFT creators are building building here, and the fact that, again, they can be bought and sold and traded all within this kind of microeconomy with very little friction. It's very easy to place your wearables and your NFTs on OpenSea for sale, and to really promote it even within the metaverse to help sell your art, sell your wearables, whatever the case may be. And this is Christina's lot here with a Christmas tree still. It's way past Christmas, but it's very cool. It's got a lot of cool stuff happening in Voxels. So that's one corner of the metaverse that we definitely always love to mention, and we're big fans of here at the Web3 Warriors, is the Voxels community, a true community of Web3 natives and people that see the value in this decentralized Web3 blockchain space. So jumping over to Sandbox, the thing with Sandbox is you pretty much have to own one of their NFTs or one of the plots of land. I believe even if you just own one of their avatar NFTs, you're able to actually jump into their metaverse. So out of the gate, that's kind of one of my big criticisms of it, despite the fact that it's not openly accessible to everybody and able to really travel through different plots yet. There's so much value, so much speculation happening within the Sandbox community that I think they're in between a rock and a hard place now, right? So they've been planning to launch. I believe I heard they were going to launch last year, and the full launch never happened. There was alpha days, which was a time that they had kind of allowed anybody and everybody to join the metaverse and walk around and experience it. And I was really impressed by what their metaverse kind of offers when I joined their open alpha days Sandbox. But I was able to find their Twitch streamers where they have an account, and they actually show some kind of content from inside the game. So they are looking to really gamify the space. Each different space has their own themes. Like I mentioned, there's Snoop Dogg in here. There's a bunch of other big names that you might know, pop stars, different comic book brands, things like that. Animoca is one of the big names behind Sandbox, which is one of the biggest kind of Web3 investing in Web3 games, Web3 investors for Web3 games. So, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But right now, I do get the vibe that it's still relatively closed. It's still relatively centralized from the perspective of, they're really trying to pace themselves and how they open it. They're not going to just like open the doors to full functionality and let people kind of have at it. And I think the reasoning why they haven't really, opened the doors wide is because they're worried that, if they do that and then the adoption doesn't come, that big key phrase, mass adoption, that they will lose value, right? And people will think that, oh, there's not enough people here, and so this place isn't as good as they said it was going to be, and then people run for the hills, right? And that's the worst case scenario, especially when you've kind of sold so much land on speculation and hope that there is going to be, if not mass adoption, at least enough adoption to make the world more engaging and exciting for people to join. So I think that they're not the only metaverse space to kind of be in a scenario like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. So I'm still kind of TBD on the Sandbox from a Voxels fidelity point of view. As you can see if you're watching the screen now, it is very cool. It's very a little bit more high fidelity, and that's because you actually need a software client in order to run it. So unlike Voxels, where you can just run it on your phone, you can run it on your desktop, laptop. For Sandbox, it will have to be on a desktop or laptop, and you'll actually have to download a launcher, basically a launcher software in order to run it. So it doesn't run just on the web alone. So that's another downside. So when you get into some of these high fidelity metaverses, you're going to need to start downloading a software launcher to really get the full experience. And, like a video game, that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it does just add another hurdle, right, to accessibility and to potentially adoption. But I do like a lot of things about what Sandbox is trying to do. They're definitely going for a very gamified experience, but also going for, popularity and trying to make it a very kind of pop culture infused, cool place to be. So we'll see what happens with Sandbox. And that's one that's really just not quite ready for prime time, but still riding a lot of speculation and making a lot of big sales, and has a lot of different projects attached to it. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes when it does open fully for prime time and has the doors open for everybody. So keeping an eye on that one. Next one we want to look at is Decentraland, another very interesting, definitely fully decentralized, really cool community of creators. It was the first metaverse space, first Web3 Metaverse that I experienced way back in early 2021 when I first jumped into the metaverse and really was starting to understand what is the metaverse, what does it mean, and what differentiates this metaverse from a video game, right? And so the idea that each one of these plots of land that I'm running around here is owned by an individual or a business entity, and they can basically build any type of content on here. Now, the one thing with Decentraland when comparing to maybe Voxels, on one hand, it does run a little bit heavier. I believe they just launched a beta for their own software launcher as well. But for the most part, you can still run it on web, but it does have to be on a desktop or laptop. It does not really function on a phone at all. So not quite as accessible as Voxels. Again, it also runs quite heavier, even on your desktop or laptop. So if you don't have a decent quality desktop or laptop, you might have trouble navigating and running around. But like Voxels, it's also, again, fully decentralized, and the land is nicely connected to each other. So you can actually like run from one plot to another. You can use teleports to teleport to different corners of the metaverse, and all of these plots are owned by someone or some entity. So it is cool from that angle. The wearables, what I'm wearing here, these shoes actually have a pretty funny story that are related to the singer French Montana. He had an NFT collection. I actually like these shoes though, but the collection didn't do too well, and there was some controversy around it. But yeah, so these shoes, the pants, the shirt, the glasses can all be different assets. And even your avatar itself, if you wanted to buy a unique avatar, even the avatar itself can be a digital asset. So that's another advantage for sure that Decentraland has going well. They do use their own SDK, which is a software developer kit, in order to build these wearables. So it is a little bit more maybe complicated, and I think you need to get like approval from their kind of centralized authority to build certain things and actually have your wearable approved for their metaverse. So I think there's a little bit more red tape at Decentraland as well compared to Voxels, where they do have some rules, and if they catch you breaking those rules, they'll delete the asset in question, or I don't know, they might even block you or whatever. But for the most part, they do allow you to create without any red tape and without having to go to any like central body to have your wearable approved or things like that. So I think that's one downside with Decentraland. But another one that's really cool to see, and Decentraland is another one that's also been kind of hurting through the bear market because they benefited a lot from heavy speculation, or just heavy kind of expectation, I should say, not really speculation, because they at least have the metaverse live and able to be experienced. But there was a big expectation that it would just keep blowing up from here. And with the bear market, we have definitely seen a slowing down in adoption, and a lot of the corners of Decentraland are fairly quiet, not unlike other metaverse spaces, right? So it's an interesting question, is mass adoption the solution? Or is it just going to have to be like a video game where, communities have their reasons to jump in there at any given time, but they don't necessarily, have a huge amount of people at any given time? We'll wait and see. But Decentraland is another one that's really cool. Definitely been in the game for a while, been fully accessible and able to be experienced for a long time. Oh, this is a really cool theater space they got here. So we'll be keeping an eye on Decentraland for sure. And the last one that I do want to mention, which definitely has a little bit more of a virtual reality VR angle that they're aiming for, is Somnium Space. The cool thing about Somnium Space as well is that they are allowing assets on both Ethereum and Solana. So they're the only metaverse that I'm aware of that is actively engaging with Solana and actually using Solana for their assets within the game. So I'd have to look under the hood a little bit more. I do not have a VR headset yet. As a proponent of the metaverse, I know that may look a little bad, but I'm waiting for that perfect VR headset. I kind of refuse to go with Oculus, and I do like the Steam one. Even the newest HP one's looking pretty nice, but I've been mulling it over, kind of taking my time. But Somnium Space is a really cool one because they're definitely going for very high fidelity, high immersion. They actually have their own VR headset, as well as I think an entire haptic suit that they've been working on, the Tesla suit, and it's not theirs, but they're kind of endorsing it and promoting it. And I know their CEO uses a Tesla suit along with this new VR headset that they're building, and it's next level. So when you think about kind of Ready Player One, like let's jump into the metaverse, put on your headset, feel like you're fully in this digital space and off to the races, I definitely feel like Somnium Space is the one that's kind of leading the pack towards that goal, that Ready Player One reality. That kind of hooked me in when I was in the earliest days of 2021, just excited about the potential for the metaverse. And Somnium Space has been in the game since then, or before then even. And again, very much focused on the VR experience, but they do also have a desktop version. But without the VR headset, it's really just not the same. But very impressive what they're doing, and I'm really excited to see what they do with the Solana side of things too, and how they evolve. I'm actually hoping to be able to get the CEO on this podcast one of these days soon. I had a really great interview with him for the platform NFTS.WTF going back almost a couple years now, and that was when they were just launching. They were just announcing that they were going to be accepting Solana NFTs and Solana assets in their metaverse. So it would be cool to reconnect with the CEO, I believe his name is Artur, and actually learn a little bit more about what is going on in the Somnium Space world. But without the VR client and without a VR headset, I haven't been able to experience it that much more. But I know the CNN documentary that they did on the metaverse did look at Somnium Space very closely, so I definitely recommend that one. We linked out to that in our episode with Dr. Jane Thomason as well, if you want to find that blurb, or you can just Google CNN Metaverse. It was actually a pretty good breakdown of the different metaverses, similar to what Dr. Jane Thomason talked about. So virtual reality obviously is a huge component, potential for the metaverse. The one downside, I think, on one side obviously is cost, but even on the actual experiential side of virtual reality, I don't know whether we'll get to that place where everybody wants to put on a VR headset, or even a large majority of people want to put on a VR headset. It's going to be interesting to see how that adoption grows. I personally definitely want one. I am in the market, still searching, but it'll be interesting to see whether, it actually takes off the way that I know people like Somnium Space, or businesses like Somnium Space and other individuals in the metaverse space kind of hope that VR continues to grow and adoption continues to grow. So that's one big question mark kind of hanging over Somnium Space, but they've got a really, really cool community going. So looking at their key points, right, they say it's a blockchain VR metaverse. They have security of ownership, authenticity of origin, tradable via decentralized marketplaces like OpenSea or on Solana's marketplace as well. I believe it's Holoplex they're using. Yeah. Also has the built with proven and secure standards, variety of creative tools. So that's their own SDK that I mentioned, software developer kit, their own builder as well, and the cross-platform VR client. So it works with multiple VR platforms. And they say by tokenizing Somnium in-game assets and land parcels, they're forever decoupling Somnium Space as a company from owning and operating the database of parcels and all in-game items by giving this power to the users instead. So that flies in very stark contrast to the way you'll see Meta kind of rolling out their metaverse space. You may be able to purchase a lot, you may be able to purchase assets and trade them, but do you actually own them in your own sovereign wallet? Or do you own them in a meta wallet that has some value and maybe you can trade it and get a little bit of value, in real world currency, but what's the percentage? 40%, 50%, and they're taking a huge cut of it, right? So just like Dr. Jane said, their goal and their modus operandi has been extraction of value, extraction of data, right? Whereas what we just read here from Somnium Space is actually going out of their way to empower the creators, right? And give the power to the users, to the community, to actually build the space on these lands and then be able to sell the land, build the digital assets, whether it's the car, whether it's the clothing, and be able to sell. And so what you're getting in that space is an actual genuine economy built on the blockchain and fully functional. And so then it's beginning to be a lot more innovative. It's beginning to be a lot more free, and really the sky's the limit where something like that goes, as opposed to building everything on a centralized platform's kind of sand. And then if they change the rules of engagement, or they decide that they don't want you to be able to sell these assets for a certain amount of real world money, they'll just scale that back, and that's what we've seen happen. We've seen happen where entire metaverse spaces just get closed because it's not profitable anymore. So in this case, at the very least, let's say worst case scenario, Somnium Space decides that they don't like the way that it's going anymore. All of these digital assets that people have purchased, all of their land that's built on specific kind of 3D builds will be held in their own sovereign wallet and likely will be able to be applied in another metaverse space if or when someone developed that. But most importantly, the assets are in your ownership, so you don't have to worry about those disappearing, right? And so that's the value of kind of the Web3 metaverse space that we're looking at. And those are kind of the 4 top metaverse spaces that I like to look at when thinking about metaverse spaces that are actual living universes, right? Which means like one land you can walk from one corner of the land to the other corner of the land and walk across 10 different parcels that are owned by 10 different people, right? That's what I think of when I think of the Web3 metaverse universe. So another side of that we've actually seen take off since, the early days of the space as well, are more tailored individual metaverse corners that are not attached to a whole universe, right? So for example, with that, we looked at Spatial last week with Ingrid. She had a really cool designed little spatial metaverse corner that had the theme of her Invisibles project, and we were able to kind of just immerse ourselves in that gallery, right? So that was kind of a gallery space, but it's closed off. You're not going to walk from that gallery over to other spaces and be able to just kind of have a full gamer experience because it's just like one corner of the metaverse. And that's cool, and it's very functional. You want to show a gallery, this is the gallery, boom, right? Monaverse is another one that's kind of similar to that, although they definitely have much more bigger ambitions and you're actually able to build almost like your own video game world, but still it's not really a universe where you're running from one owned piece of land to another owned piece of land, and that's the difference there. On Cyber is another one where you can build your own gallery. It is kind of on chain. It's able to put up all your different NFTs on the wall and be able to actually show off your artwork in the gallery spaces. But again, you're not really running from necessarily one corner to the next, actually, meeting people and having that kind of gamified gamer experience. So that's something else to kind of keep in mind when it comes to the metaverse and how these things kind of work and what you're looking for in the metaverse, right? Do you just want to create a gallery and have a gallery space that people can kind of run to and visit? Then, maybe on Cyber or Spatial or even Monaverse. Well, Monaverse is a lot more complicated, but on Cyber or Spatial would probably be the way to go. So here, if you're looking at the screen, is an example of an on Cyber gallery. It's actually the first metaverse gallery I ever built. I love on Cyber. They have a lot of really cool designed rooms that are customizable. So this is just one room where I'm able to kind of show off my NFTs that I've had for quite a while. These are my OG collection, So it has a functional use case, right? But it's still Web3, it's still part of the metaverse for sure. But when I look at those 4 top kind of metaverse spaces that are very Web3, very decentralized, tokenized economics happening on chain, but also have, again, that connectivity, that universal kind of application where it does feel like a whole world of different entities, different businesses, different people. And then, as that fills up, as that becomes more active, there'll be even more opportunities to actually add to that world and see where it goes and see how things grow and expand and evolve. So that is the Web3 metaverse that we are looking forward to. Those are just 4 examples. There are, of course, many other examples, and we are very much looking forward to see what other side does, how soon they do end up actually launching. But that's another kind of scenario, just like what I talked about with the Sandbox, where they've sold so much land and now they want to make sure that when they launch that the excitement stays, right? Because the risk is pretty great if for whatever reason it starts looking like things are questionable, So another one that happened here with the rollout of the Yuga Labs space, there was a lot of criticism because gas fees got insanely high. So now you've got a situation, right, where a lot of people spent a lot of money on speculated parcels of land. And there's situations where, because everyone wanted one and the speculation was so high and they're promising like the most amazing Web3 metaverse experience you've ever seen, full immersion, being able to support really high levels of a volume of people, but like, are you even going to get that volume of people jumping in? Who knows? So based on that speculation, right, they were able to have basically a ridiculous amount of sales, selling transactions and selling lots for like over 5 Ethereum and things like that. So now you have a situation where if the metaverse is short of expectations and doesn't kind of have the adoption that they're hoping for, aiming for, you know, it could be real ugly if there's a scenario where people think that they were kind of sold a bill of goods and that the metaverse that ends up coming is not what they promised, right? So we're waiting to see what happens with other side, what happens with some of these other Web3 Metaverse spaces projects that are being planned, that are being promoted, but have yet to actually come to fruition. So those 4, Voxels, Decentraland, Sandbox, and Somnium Space, I think are leading the pack when it comes to the topic of the Web3 Metaverse. Looking at the state of the Web3 Metaverse in 2023, I think that you have, especially in the case of Sandbox and Yuga Labs' other side, a very kind of pressure cooker situation where they do have to kind of perform at a very high level when they do launch fully. Otherwise, you know, they might see a lot of lost value. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Maybe that happens this year. Maybe they hold out for the next bear market or the next bull market before they even launch. I don't know. Because both those, I think Sandbox and Other Side had been talking about launching sooner than I think they will, for everybody, that is. So it'll be interesting to see how those go and if they're able to live up to the very expensive speculation that they've now been able to benefit from. So those are going to be interesting to watch. To Voxels, you know, they got their leadership changes. It's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves. Decentraland continues to want to engage with more investment, wanting to grow in the right direction, but they've gone fairly quiet. So it'll be interesting to see how they do as well. Looking at some of these floor prices, looking at Decentraland right now, you're looking at 0.9 Ethereum, so roughly 1 Ethereum to buy a lot of land on in the decentralized metaverse, or Decentraland metaverse. For crypto voxels, you're looking at 0.289 right now is the floor price. So you could get a lot in crypto voxels for as low as 0.289. Definitely quite low right now. So it might be a time if you think that the Voxels metaverse is here to stay and you want to get a piece of land in there. Even Sandbox right now is down to 0.78 for a piece of land in Sandbox metaverse right now. So if you look at some of their all-time trading, the highs were quite high. So they were going for about 4 or 5 Ethereum at one point, and now, you know, that was the average back in early 2022, and that was kind of their peak. Had an average of 4.4 Ethereum per piece of land, which would be, you know, roughly $6,000, $5,000. And it's been kind of steadily going down since then, you know, to just under 1 ETH now. So this is the state of the Web3 Metaverse right now. It will be very interesting to see how the Web3 Metaverse evolves this year and into the future. Thank you to Dr. Jane Thomason again for breaking down kind of those other elements of the metaverse, whether it's kind of the meta Facebook metaverse, whether it's the government metaverse, seeing what governments try to do with this digital opportunity to kind of have 24/7 accessible services. That's a very interesting function of the metaverse as well. But what we're focused on is the Web3 metaverse and how it marries with the gaming metaverse. So we're really excited to see what happens this year in 2023. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I want to mention again, if you have not visited our metaverse corner at web3warriors.io, please do visit and sign our guest book there. And for your chance to win a limited edition Avril 15 wearable that you see on the screen here. It's very cool, beautifully put together by the amazing Jagar, aka Meta Voxels. If you want to see his spot in Voxels, you can just search Meta Voxels with a Z and check that out as well. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Seeing no questions from the chat. It's a good conversation on the state of the Web3 metaverse. We're rooting for all the entities really building up in this real decentralized space. We don't think it's a situation where it has to be one metaverse to rule them all. On the contrary, that would be worst case scenario. We want to have interoperability. We want to have the ability to jump from one metaverse to another for different reasons, you know, different communities maybe, different vibes, different styles, you know. but it's not that one has to destroy the other one. So we're hoping to see them all kind of grow in a really positive way, in a fruitful way. We always say abundance over scarcity. We don't have to be competing. We can actually just be collaborating and building and growing together. So that's what we hope to see in the metaverse. And with that, please do sign the guest book at web3warriors.io. We will be back next week talking to Dr. Lemney, an amazing artist from the NFT community space. And thank you for tuning in. And until next week, we will catch you in the metaverse. Peace out, everybody.